Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Gemini Solar Festival gathering of the 2025 initiative. My name is Alexander, and I welcome you on behalf of the 2025 Initiatives Coordination Group. Today's gathering is the first part of the 2-day event when we experiment with a new format for our work, seeking more efficient way for us to share, listen each other, and meditate together. Gemini is the third phase of the higher interlude of the year. Following Aries, Taurus, we come to Gemini to bring our collective focus on the higher note that's been transmitted and received during the 2 first full moons of the higher interlude. And as we focus this note, meditate on it together, to radiate it to humanity. And in focus of our meditation is the theme of right relationships. In Aries, we meditated on the vision of the plan. What are the next steps for humanity? How does the plan unfold for humanity at this time? In Taurus, during the Vesak festival, we reflected together on how we come from the vision to expanding our discipleship capacity to be manifested through our service. And at this full moon, we invite the world group, the world community, to bring the focus on how we come from our capacity for our discipleship potential to service expressed through right relationships. So this is our focus for this 2 days gathering. As I said, the format this time would be a little bit different than before. And in a way, it's a dual event, not just because it's 2 days event, but because it comes as in a conjunction with the Sagittarius open forum that we had 6 months ago, and another one that we will have in 6 months. Through these 2 open forums, through these 2 gatherings, we emphasize the axis of Gemini Sagittarius, which are, as been said in esoteric astrology, intimately related to the planet Earth through its rulers. And through this energy of these 2 signs, we exercise our capacity to work as a united group, strengthening our group field, learning to listen to each other, and to work as one unified group. And as we do this, we keep in focus the festival week of the new group of world servers coming later this year, December 21st through December 28th. The structure of our gathering in Gemini, as I said, a 2 days event. Today we will invite you to, by listening presentations of our speakers, meditating, to create a mental focus, point of mental tension, and meditating the note of right relationships today through tomorrow and afterwards. And then when we come back tomorrow, we would be able to share our impressions, to ask our questions, and again to come together in meditation. So today we are listening and meditating. And so let's start our work today. I invite Wendy Thompson from Sydney, Australia, to lead us in meditation, in alignment meditation. Wendy, over to you.
Thank you, Sasha. In this alignment, you're invited to participate in a group identification process where, within the embrace and protectiveness of the chalice of this group heart, we will transfer our awareness within the one being along a particular thread of the silence and sound of the bell as we visualize identifying with the bell at the center of the cosmic foundation, the mountain of the bell on our planetary sphere, and the bell within the individual orbit of each and every human being, the bell that resides in us. Legend has it that when the planetary creator had toiled over the formation of the earth, he gave particular attention to creating the fertile plains to provide humanity with agriculture for bread and trade. But the mother of the world wanted to know where, beyond these worldly pursuits, the pure in spirit would go to gather strength. She suggested that the planetary creator give humanity either wings or mountains. The planetary creator gifted us, the mountains in the externalized world, with their awesome capacity to inspire us to the summit of human achievement. And amidst the majestic Himalayas resides Mount Kailash, which looks like it's been molded by a divine sculptor into the shape of a bell, and indeed is known as the mountain of the bell. The name rings true, just as truth and beauty ring through this thread of silence and sound of the bell, which we have the opportunity to strengthen. Center your awareness in your individual heart center. We're told that our hearts as organs are on loan to us for the purpose of communion with the highest worlds. Within your individual heart center, become aware of the center which is called the bell within you. Here, listen in your heart to the subtle sound resonating in your bell center. Now, transfer your awareness into the group heart. Within the group heart and as the group, transfer awareness into the energy center that substands the form of Mount Kailash, known as the Mountain of the Bell, the earthly counterpart to the mythic Mount Meru, the celestial axis of the world. Here, listen through the group heart to the subtle sounds resonating and vibrating within the Mountain of the Bell. Within the group heart and as the group, transfer awareness to the location of the bell at the center of the cosmic foundation, where the beauty of cosmic evolution unfolds and infinity is regarded as the basic aspect of life. Here, listen through the group heart to the rhythm and the ringing of the fiery bell at the center of cosmic foundation. Here, listen to the silence of the cosmos. And now, within the group heart, as we transfer our awareness back to the Mountain of the Bell, we do so on the vibrational rhythm and pulse of the silence of the cosmic bell. Identified within the group heart, within the center substanding the Mountain of the Bell, we pause in silence as we are aware of the movement and vibration of Mount Kailash as it rings its bell as the celestial axis of the planetary world. Here, listen to the reverberations as the Mountain of the Bell rings throughout the planetary sphere. Within the group heart, become aware of the individual heart center and its connection to the center in the head called the bell. Within the group heart center, become aware that like a resonator, this bell within each individual gathers the symphony of the world and can transform the deepest silence into a thundering chord. Listen for a moment in silence to how the bell rings through us. We distribute the energies contacted as we radiate the connection through the group heart, from the cosmic bell, through the mountain of the bell, through the bell within us. Cosmic truth and beauty ring through the bell that is us. In silence, we sound a silent Om.
Thank you, Wendy. After focusing on the vision of the plan in Aries and building discipleship capacity in Taurus, we come to Gemini, the period of invocation and radiant distribution. We use the opportunity of the Gemini Solar Festival, Festival of Humanity and Goodwill, to distribute the impulse of the higher spiritual interlude of the year to humanity, focusing on the establishment of right relationships as a foundation for our service. Today, we welcome panelists who will share their thoughts regarding right relationships from capacity to service. And tomorrow, we will all have an opportunity to share. The first of 3 sharings today is by Renee Fougere in Canada, who will speak about right relationships within and between individuals. Renee Fougere is a retired psychologist. He has been studying and teaching esoteric psychology and esoteric healing since 1973. He is the director of the Training Center for Energy Balancing in Montreal, Canada. Welcome, Renee.
Yes, thank you, and welcome everyone to this Gemini Festival. So, as presented by Dot, I will just go through what is implied by our capacity to serve. So, I will do my presentation being accompanied by a picture. Could you put that on the screen, Alexander? Yes. So it will be the top of the page. Yes, so you could follow the sections of my presentation. They will be all following that plan. So the first point is that our capacity to serve increase as we purify and refine our personality. We all want to be useful. And however, despite our good intentions, we rapidly come in touch with our own limitations when we try to help others. We realize that the main limitations we experience at first is our inability to establish right and productive relations with people around us. And a little later, we realize how unprepared and unequipped we are to serve. However, these things can be worked on. And then we can grow from good intentions to capacity to serve. How do we develop this capacity? It's always through consciousness. We are beings of consciousness. So by becoming conscious of what is happening inside of us and in our interactions, mainly when we act in ways which are counterproductive to what we want to do. So this is what brings us the most consciousness about what has to be worked on. So once we have identified the points that we have to work on, we have to take charge of our defects, which are the causes of our external problems. In fact, everything that we experience in the world is simply a reflection of what is within. So that's why it is very efficient to look inside for the cause, and then we can work on them and have very, very deep changes happening in our life. For a long time in the past, we have tried to save the face, and we attributed the responsibility for these difficult days to bad luck, to other people, and to circumstances. The truth is that the way we live, the type of relations we have with others, is exactly a reflection of patterns that are inside of us. The entry upon the spiritual path marks a reversal. From being a victim, we struggle to take full responsibility for ourselves. In fact, it is the only way to change ourselves and to change the world. And we all learn that we cannot change others. It does not work. The only person we can change is us. So the third point is by developing the needed skills and qualities in real life so that they can be used to correct our defects and limitations. Any defect that we have, in fact, is a quality that is not managed. And when we learn to recognize that quality and to manage it in a positive and conscious way, it becomes expressed positively. And then it is an asset and a quality instead of a defect. Now, how do we do it practically? So the first point is to use the mind. In fact, at that point, we need to study a little bit of psychology and begin before we try to make that work of self-transformation, to have a more clear idea of the subtle constitution of the human being and how the human being develops. And so we need some study in psychology. So there are some models that have been given. For example, at the bottom of the page, if you want to show the bottom of the page, Alexander. So we have two models there about the constitution of the human being. So the first one is the one given by the Tibetan master DK in the book Treatise on Cosmic Fire. And it is a most useful diagram because it shows us like a map what is there inside of us. So it shows on the bottom of the diagram that we have the physical aspect of us, the emotional aspect of us, the mental aspect of us, and the spiritual aspect of us. And it shows also the subplanes. And with that diagram, we can follow our progress to see where we are functioning and what is the next step. And it gives indications when we study it about how it can be done. The diagram on the right side is called the egg diagram by Roberto Assagioli, and it is a simplification of that first diagram that we talked about. And it has been presented by Assagioli in his book, Psychosynthesis. So we will come back to the bottom of the page, Alexander. And so the second thing we have to do is to discipline ourselves to meditate regularly. And the reason for that is to develop a conscious contact with our soul. And it makes the work of knowing and working on our personality so much easier when it is done with the help of the soul and with the detachment that the soul can bring us in that work, so that we have the right attitude to work efficiently and to enhance the cooperation between the parts that are inside of us. So the first work that we have to do is to do the work of purification on our emotional nature. So I will describe that for about 10 minutes. And then there is a more subtle work that needs to be done later on the mental aspect of ourselves. And then on the personality itself, as it becomes integrated, because yes, it becomes an hindrance and a problem. And then finally, the fusion of the personality with the soul itself. So let's look now at the work of purification of the emotional nature. So the first part is to discover our emotional problems, because this is the most obvious in our life, that first we have emotional reactions, and we have a character. And so when we observe ourselves, we identify these problems of behavior and the problems of characters that we have. And we can observe it through their manifestation in our physical problems and illnesses, because as we know, most of them are the manifestation of inner causes. And also of how we behave in relationship with anything in our life. For example, how we behave in a relationship with money, possessions, sex, power, anger, control, depression, relationship, group work, etc., etc., etc. For doing that work of exploration and discovery of our problems, we first have to do a kind of systematic observation of ourselves. So see how we are, how we behave, and also to be open to the feedbacks of others, what people tell to us about the difficulties we create for them. And it can be helped also by doing a review of our day every day to just see systematically how we did, good or less good in our day, in order to identify what needs to be worked on, and then to begin a serious work of working on it systematically. So as we deepen the understanding of our problems, we discover that they are caused mainly by subconscious reactive patterns, which means patterns that are totally unknown to us and that are reactive. That means that these are reactions that are triggered by persons or events in our life. For example, in certain circumstances that are rare or very frequent, depending on them, for example, we can see a part of us which is the perfectionist, the inadequate one, the victim, the fearful part of us, the aggressive part of us, the controller, the depressed part of me. So all of these parts are called subpersonalities in the language of psychosynthesis, which means simply that they are poles of behavior. That means that this is a kind of extreme neurotic behavior that I have, that I do unconsciously, and it is always counterbalanced by another extreme. For example, I may have in myself a perfectionist, and on the other side, what will in fact protect me from that extreme uh, demanding perfectionist is the inadequate. When I fall into the inadequate one and powerless one who cannot do anything, so that the perfectionist does not have any power on us anymore. And then we gain the control with that other game. But usually we don't see these things because they are quite subtle and we don't readily identify them in our life. But by taking attention to them, we discover these patterns, and then we can begin to work on them and to free ourselves from them. The main thing to understand is that the most a part of us is unconscious, the most it can control us because we have no clue. But when it becomes conscious, then we see it as it arises and it begins to control us. And then we can begin to manage it and to develop a kind of balance in ourselves. That part of the work, which is the purification of character and work on our polarities, has not been developed in the books of DK. in Alice Bailey, and also in much esoteric literature, because it is considered as preliminary steps of the work on the path. It does not mean that they are not very, very important. And this preliminary work has been developed and presented in a very, very practical way by a psychiatrist called Roberto Assegioli, who was a student of DK. And he presented it under the name of personal psychosynthesis. And a great part of it is also given by modern psychology through a variety of methods to purify and to integrate the personality. So this preparatory work is very important, because if it is not done, it will hinder our efforts to serve. And many esoterists today who know a lot, in fact, they cannot do, and who have not done the work of purification of their emotional and mental nature, are to a certain degree unable to apply what they know. And we can see it even in ourselves, that we are blocked. And we can be blocked not only with our own functioning, but because of the difficulties of personality that we have not worked with, we can be a big problem for our collaborators because of our character, and also being victim of personal glamours that distort our work, and personality defects that very, very much hinder our work. Sometimes to the point that we are unable to establish right relations with others and to do group work. Acting as if, as has been recommended in the esoteric teachings, is the very first step that is very important to do, but it is important to complement it by a conscious endeavor to purify the emotional, the mental body, and the personality itself by the taking charge of these poles and developing the missing qualities that are the antidotes of these problems. So the third point is to bring a coordination and integration of our main pair of subpersonalities. And we write between parentheses the big five. This is just an encouraging note telling us that there is not an infinity of polarities in us, or pairs of polarities or subpersonalities, but we usually have five. And so there is an end in view when we take that work with us. It means that if we work intensively on it, it will take something like between 10 and 20 years, and then it will be over. And then it is integrated forever, because when it is in us and when we have developed the skills to balance ourselves and not to be reactive anymore, this is done forever, and we will reincarnate with that, because it is recorded in our permanent atoms, as we know. So in order to do that work of bringing a coordination and integration of our pair of subpersonalities, we first need to become unbiased towards parts of ourselves that we prefer. For example, I may prefer in myself the pleaser more than the controller. And so, as a biased, if you want, intervener, I will have a lot of difficulties to work with these parts inside of myself if I first do not learn to disidentify from them and to develop what we call the position of the observer, which is the capacity to be a benevolent and impartial observer of ourselves and of the parts which are within ourselves. And there are exercises that are given in psychosynthesis and other approaches to develop this capacity to disidentify and to become the observer and identify with the soul, in fact. So when we have developed that capacity to be the observer, we examine a pattern in us that will get frequently triggered. For example, in my observation, I had seen that the perfectionist comes in very often, And because of its ruthless demands on me, it always brings at some point the opposite pole, which is the inadequate. By a further observation, I will realize that the perfectionist being very dysfunctional in myself and also bringing very, very difficult relationship with others, because it's not fun to be with a ruthless perfectionist. It's hard to live with. We still discover that there is a great quality there, which is the great quality of striving always to do better and to go beyond what we could do. And by observing the inadequate, when we become very, very like disempowered and paralyzed and self-depreciating, you see, we realize that there is a very important quality in that, which is the sensitivity to our needs and and the capacity, in fact, to protect ourselves through that distorted way of being. But anyway, through the observer and observing and accepting and recognizing the qualities of both, you see, then we can bring the consciousness of these two subpersonalities to expand. In fact, subpersonalities are parts of us that are like neurotic persona that reside on an insulated island without any communication with one another. So when we are in one pole, for example, the perfectionist, we are just in a tunnel vision and we just want what we desire, perfection. And when we are into the inadequate, we are absolutely like a neurotic guy, which is simply feeling like a limp and not able to do anything. You see, and so they are like prisoners in their world. But once we bring a kind of consciousness to one pole about the other and vice versa, they awake to the presence of these other parts in us. It may be very surprising to learn that there are many parts in us that we don't know and that don't know one another and that don't work for the whole. But it is the case. And we may not be surprised that when parts of us like that are very, very much tunnel vision and one-minded on something without taking into consideration the good of the whole, it becomes problematic in our communications and relations. So it becomes very, very hard to have right relations. So we can understand that the only way to reestablish and being able to maintain right relationships with others is to establish these right relationships within ourselves first. So when we have balanced a pair of subpersonalities, for example, the pair perfectionist inadequate, there is a great release of energy and a great balance that comes in, because we can express simultaneously in real time in our own life that capacity to always striving to be better and at the same time to be sensitive to our limits and to be loving for ourselves and considerate for what we can and what we cannot do. And so, as you see, if I learn to apply that on my life, then it will be automatically generalized or applicable in my relationships. And then I will end up having a pair of qualities that I absolutely ignored in me, in myself. And what is very interesting is that when we talk about these big fives, they correspond to our rays and to vehicles or parts of us, like my physical body, my emotional body, my mental body, my personality, my soul ray, etc. And when they are distorted, they very often express as polarities. But when they are integrated, all these parts of me begin to work in a very cooperative and synergic way. So we become much more able, as we were saying, it is really the way to go from potential to being able to do that. And so this is a long work, and it is the most difficult work to do this emotional work. But it's not the end, but at the same time, this is the longest and the hardest. And then we become aware that there are other difficulties in us which are related to our mind. So at first, we sense the need to become much more mental in order to really heal the emotional parts, because the emotions, to a degree, can be worked from the emotional level, but the real healing and definitive healing will be brought by a work on the other level, which is the mental level. And then we work on the causes of the emotional reactions, which are always thoughts or ideas that we think that we should have, or that we should behave. And then we have these reactions. So when we begin to work on the causes on the mental level, we do a kind of another path of work on the purification of the emotional body. And as we do it, we become very conscious, in fact, of the thoughts that we have in us, and we begin to see limiting patterns with our mind. For example, limitations about what I can do and not do, and the biases about how things should be in my life. For example, I am a man and I am supposed to behave in that way because I am a man. I am born in this community. And in that community, you see, we have that demand. So this is something, in fact, that comes very, very, very much to our awareness, and we begin to work on it. So this is the work of becoming mentally polarized, and at the same time working on the biases and conditionings of our lower mind. And we do it with the help of the light of the soul through meditation. And then the next step is that we begin to realize that the personality itself is a problem.
Excuse me, Renee. Excuse me. Let me just say you have about 1 minute.
Okay, I will just go fast.
Thank you.
So then we work on the personality and the main bias of the personality, which is the problem of the ray of the personality itself. And then when we free ourselves from that, it's a great relief, in fact, for us and mainly for the ones who are around us, so that we don't manifest the problem of the personality. And the next step after that is the fusion with the soul. And so all of that are steps that we have to do, in fact, sequentially, in order to be really helpful by becoming transparent to the energy of the soul as the personality. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renee. Let us take a quiet minute to fully take in Renee's sharing. Now we will hear from Felix Kroller and Ringo Hagendorf in Germany, who will speak about right relationships within and between groups. Go and change. Entwicklungsgemeinschaft für Lebensqualität, a development community striving to enhance the quality of life. Felix Kroller is co-founder and co-leader, and Ringo Hagendorf is in the leadership team of Go and Change. The community was founded in 2015 in Leipzig, Germany, as a group for inner work, evolution of consciousness, healing, and networking with other projects around the world. Now they are around 60 people living in a former monastery in Bavaria and are working for a new, more loving culture on a daily basis. Welcome, Felix and Ringo.
Yeah, hello, thank you very much. I'm Felix.
And I'm Ringo.
From Go and Change, Entwicklungsgemeinschaft für Lebensqualität. Thank you very much that we can speak on the webinar From Capacity to Service.
Thank you.
And now we will show you a little bit about our community as example for right relationships in groups and communities and between communities. We are a community located in the middle of Germany in Lülsfeld.
Yeah, this is a small village with at around 400 people population, and you can see on the left that our ground with the old former monastery, and yeah, we live there together with other people from the village, have a good integration in the village, and also support from the sisterhood who lived there before and which are living now in Würzburg, some kilometers away from us. And on the right, you can see the monastery from the outside. And on the left, you have again a picture of the ground with the main building where we all live. We have a little park. We have a lot of place for organic farming where we try different approaches of farming, permaculture, market gardening, and so on. And we also have a big orchard with a lot of apple trees.
Yeah, we were founded in 2015, Leipzig. A friend of mine and me, we started and gathered some people around us. And with about 15 people, we moved to Lülsfeld, to the old monastery in 2017. And now we are about 50 adults and 10 to 11 children. One is coming these days, so I counted in. We are a very young community with an average age about 30 years, and our oldest new members about 80, and our youngest will be born in some days. Yeah. Well, our name is Entwicklungsgemeinschaft für Lebensqualität. It means in English a development community striving to enhance the quality of life. And that was when we were founded. We thought about what is the main thing we want to add to the world. What is our service to the world? And it's to enhance the quality of life.
Yeah, and to do this, we had to ask us some important questions. At least we came together to seek for new rules and principles of a fulfilling, loving, and peaceful and happy life, and to integrate as much beings and serve as much beings as possible. And so we ask us, how could we do this? How could we create this life? How could we create community and healthy relationship, sustainable living, constructive way of living, so that the needs of the individuals were covered, and also of the whole would be fulfilled and integrated, so that we have on the one hand, for example, the need of the individual, but on the other, the more important needs of a group, or even further, the system we live in. And also the question, how can we live in tune of everything that is? How can we relate to truth and support even the transformation of the world, to help others to create also a more beautiful world? The good news were that we hadn't to start at zero. We already have a big base of answers in the world. We have a lot of answers in modern psychology, philosophy, religion, spiritual perspectives all over the world. We have the natural science with good answers. And another important point was we also have lived experiences. We have contact to other people's groups and projects who try to achieve more covering and fulfilling way of living, and also has experience with like eco-village or things like this. And yeah, they also had their knowledge, their things they work and they don't work. They have tried some deadlocks, and we had to go this way again. Okay, I don't know how far we get, but I will repeat the last point. So conclusion is that we had a lot of lived experiments and knowledge from these projects, and yeah, we hadn't to reproduce the mistakes, and we could start with a certain consciousness and solutions.
What we saw with all of that, what already existed in the world, is that we need a consciousness that is able to embrace and hold all these perspectives to create synthesis, whole synergies of what already exists in parts. So the study is a study of all the solutions and dead ends of everything that was tried out so far, was a very important first step, and then we had to see, okay, what are the basics, what is needed to create a community that doesn't make the same mistakes and that integrates all the achievements of everything that was before. And we came to the point that we need a very strong commitment between the people who are in the community. With the first point that we are all self-empowered beings. We take responsibility for our decisions. We are light warriors standing beside light warriors. And out of this, it was very important to acknowledge that we have a holy spark of light. There is a holy spark of light in everyone, but we also have shadows and patterns and everything that Renee talks about, for example. But we are not the shadows. We are the holy spark of light, or the light warrior, or the spiritual warrior, or how you want to name it. And as this warrior, we decide more often for love than for our own sensitivities. It's more important that I serve the group, or that I serve the life, that I serve the existence, than I go for my sensitivities. But my true needs are integrated in the whole. So when I decide for love and to serve the whole, I'm also serving myself, but not my shadows, just my light. So the more and more people that decide that love is more important for them than their sensitivities, the stronger the commitment or group is. And when we do it, when we live it, then trust emerges. Trust between all the people. When we see that in more and more cases, love is more important than our sensitivities, then trust emerges. And to achieve that, we saw that one of the most important ways or most working ways is that we are transparent. We are transparent about ourselves, so we talk with each other about mostly everything, and not just talking with each other about everything what is in us, but we also give feedback and mirror each other. So when I see that another person do something destructive, I can mirror it, I can feedback it. And if I see someone do something very constructive, I can mirror it. And so we have a very transparent field of community between us, where we can relate in a more true and a deeper way to each other, because less and less is hidden behind patterns and shadows and so on, and we can relate more and more and better to the light warrior in us. And that's one of the most important things for the foundation of a very well working community that is serving the world's existence. And for the complexity, or to hold the complexity at least in mind, there's a theory that helped us very well. It's an integral theory from Ken Wilber, and we have a quick view in it.
Yeah, so let us have a look at the four basic perspectives on the world, which helps us to integrate this higher principles Felix mentioned before. And as you can see, we have at least four of these perspectives, and we have on the left the interior, and on the right the exterior, and on the top the individual, and on the bottom the collective, which leads to four perspectives, where we have, like we know it in the language, for example, the I, the individual self, the inner part of the individual. We have the outer part of us. When we look at ourselves, we not just have the mind and the feelings, but we also have an external body and behavior. And we always live not just as individuals, but we are embedded in a group and in a culture, and even in more whole ecosystems and networks which take care of us, for example. And concrete, what does it mean for our work? It means that we have to take a look at these perspectives, take them seriously, and see how we can bring light and this quality of living in every part of this of our existence. So what does that mean? We have to ask us, which shadows do we have, which light do we have, and how is that in me, but also in you and in us. So we can heal even better when we reflect each other in a group process, and we can also speed this process up by reflecting on nutrition, body work, etc. And then we have a emergence and a synthesis between all these aspects of life.
Well, before I come to right relationships between communities, I would say a word to our work in here, or how we radiate what we learn and achieve in the community. We have about every weekend some events where we invite people, mostly from Germany or from German-speaking countries, but around the world as well, to get to know us and to see how we live and work, and what the achievements are of the way we live the people that come here can have a sense of what it means to be transparent and to be authentic. And we can connect between the light warriors in us. So yeah, that's how we work. We invite people, and they can have a taste of what we are doing. And that's one part of our work, and the other part is that we work with other communities, project, or with everyone who wants to change the world. It's one reason why we are here in this webinar, because we met Alexander, and we were inspired by the initiative 2025, and wanted to collaborate because we see this as a spark of light of what he's doing and the initiative is doing, and we want to support this and to connect and want to work together. And that's the way how we approach other communities and persons and projects in the world. For example, we have some or more and more deep connection with other communities on a very basic human level, so that we see each other as who we are and what we have done in the world. Their community is 30-40 years old, and what they have done to change the world to the better. It's we just have to appreciate it and to be humble and to see that, wow, very, very cool, very nice. And so we can acknowledge each other and can support each other, and can help that everything and everyone that is going for love, for light, for a better world, that it can flourish. Yeah, that's the other part of our work, and we do it as well with our village. We are very well integrated with the other 400 people that are living around us. We are doing some parties together. We are helping in the firefighters. We are in the chapel. We are in different community events of the village. And as well with the sisterhood who have sold the monastery to us. We are helping them to renovate their mother house, so their main house. They're renovating it, and we help, and they help us, and we have a very cool exchange between perspective of an old Catholic sisterhood and our modern community. It's so rich what we can learn from each other, and yeah, and we are looking for other people, other light warriors all over the globe, to create a network of light warriors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felix and Ringo. Let us now take a quiet moment and reflect on their sharing. Ute Gabai from Germany and Israel will now share about right relationships within and between nations. Ute Gabai is the founder and director of the Hechal Center for Universal Spirituality in Jerusalem, www.hechal.org, where she has worked as a psychotherapist and meditation teacher for over 25 years. She is the author of Awaken the Will to Love. Ute has written various articles and spoken at conferences in Israel, Palestine, Europe, and the US about universal spirituality and right relations between individuals, groups, and collectives. At the moment, she is mainly engaged in co-writing a book about the psychosynthesis of the Jewish people and in learning to cooperate with the subtle worlds. Welcome, Ute.
Hello, hello everyone. After the presentations of René and Felix and Ringo, I will kind of complement this looking at the larger picture. Humanity is on the height of the struggle to shift from separation consciousness to relation consciousness in general. It's happening all over our planet, from survival of the fittest to caring for the highest good of all, from this solar plexus propelled activity to a heart-centeredness. This inner tension and struggle is going on, we could say, in every individual and group at the moment. But it is most widely or best visible on the media in nations and international relationships. It's all over the media. Right relations on the national level follows the same principles as right relations on the individual and group level. I will also refer to Assagioli several times, picking up on what René showed. Assagioli applied his psychosynthesis on all the levels, including what he calls a psychosynthesis of a nation. And it can be a nation, or also this is true for any collective. Any collective has a physical, emotional, and mental aspect. And we can say that it has a personality and a soul as well. And it shows the same dynamics which René described on the individual level, like the polarities, the subpersonalities, the integration of the different bodies. All this process needs to be done both in a group, as Felix and Ringo gave examples of, and also in nations, in bigger collectives. Of course, it takes much longer, and we are only at the very beginning of realizing this need of this process also on the national level. It takes a conscious cognitive shift from perceiving a collective as just an outer object, a physical form, to perceiving it as a living organism, a field of consciousness that has its own dynamics, that is actually alive, a living being. And this cognitive shift that we need to do, once we do it, it becomes possible for us to feel this entity, to get a felt sense, an authentic experience of the livingness within this collective entity. And this is actually the way the beginning of consciously relating to it, to enter a relationship with a collective. Let us take a moment to feel, each one of us, to feel our nation as something that is alive, that is actually a being, a field of consciousness with a very lively dynamics. Let's take just a few seconds to link in with our nation. Yes, so I want to stay with this point a little longer because I feel that this is a transformative point. This is a real important shift. Once we can feel this inner livingness of any entity on any level, then a path of relationship opens up. And in actuality, the perception of an entity as a living organism makes us aware that we are already related, that there exists a relational or social fabric underlying the outer separateness. We have all our separate physical bodies, so we feel separate. But it's actually, once we can perceive of fields of consciousness rather than only the physical outer appearance, then we can have this sense that, for example, that with a bamboo forest, which when we see it above ground, it seems like all these individual trees. But when we look underground, we see that all these trees have actually only one root, one big network of one single root. And just this, when we figure this out, that when we have it as a visceral experience, this relatedness, then it's natural that we take care of each other. It's really the transformative point. Then the thinking and acting in line with the highest good for all becomes obvious and logical and natural. This is the natural way to be with each other. So it becomes a new bottom line on all levels, in an individual life, in a group, and in a nation. So we can say that right relations follows a natural procession. We start with ourselves, taking care of the various parts in ourselves, bring them into relation, integrate them, becoming one whole being. And then we become fit for learning to be in a group, to function as a part of a group. And then we learn to function as a group as a whole. And a healthy, coherent group life that is oriented to the highest good of all, sooner or later it begins to have an effect on its surroundings and eventually on the nation or the collective it lives in. It starts to radiate its qualities, its caring, its love, its joy, its creativity, and has a harmonizing, strengthening influence on the surroundings, like the community of Felix and Ringo has on this little village. And it goes beyond that also. When we become like an island of coherence and clarity, we start to have an effect on the thought life of the collective. We start to subtly influence public opinion. We can infuse it with higher unifying ideas. And the more such individuals and groups are present in any nation, the higher is the nation's capacity to self-organize on the basis of this new bottom line of highest good of all. It will create more and more win-win situations for all its members, create a healthy social fabric in which you feel safe, in which you know that you are cared for, and this brings then out the best in all the citizens. If we just imagine for a moment more and more such communities like Felix and Ringo, what cumulative effect it will have on the nation, and this networking between the different groups. So the more such win-win experience becomes natural, a natural way of life in a nation, the more, of course, it will naturally also enter into right relations of abundance, of giving, of sharing with other nations. And so it plays its part in the one life. The same as for nations, it goes for religions, for example, or other collectives. So we spiritual workers are called to be agents of right relations on all these levels, to use our consecrated heart and our clear mind in group formation on behalf of our nation. That is surely one of the most important functions that we can take up at this time. And more of us in the esoteric community take this function, play around with it, experiment with it. For example, Alex Radcliffe keeps us informed of a picture about this complex situation of the Brexit situation in Britain. She identifies the key forces at work, and when we don't have to do it for ourselves, when somebody gives us, somebody that is trusted, gives us a clear update. So this group of thinkers that gets this update can use our creative thought to stand behind those who are identified as the forces towards right relations in, for example, now the UK. And also the same for Europe. This call to stand for the unity and integrity of Europe. If more and more people in Europe hold this thought, that will go a long way towards right relations on the national and international level. Also Tuya and Michael Robbins do this work with the collective consciousness of the nations. And my group in Jerusalem, the Hechal group, we work also for right relations in Jerusalem. We have every Monday we do a Jerusalem meditation where we work with imbuing this collective, the Jerusalem area, with the will to love, the will to right relations. And also we are doing work for many years on behalf of right relations between Jewish people and non-Jews in the world. This type of work, Assagioli has coined a peculiar name for this type of work. It's the group of best citizens, he calls it. Such groups are actually can be seen as an expression of the heart center and the ajna center of a nation. It takes up the function of the conscious I, like in an individual, now for a collective, safeguarding the values, holding a clear picture, formulating a clear picture of the present situation, becoming the observer of all these patterns and all these processes that need to be done in a nation, and also invoking its spiritual resources, invoking the national soul. And in this process of invoking the national soul, of course, this is a long process, and it must be an ongoing process that will enable this group to vision, to conceive of a vision of what could be the next step for a nation. Can be like an inner council of wise women and men. Maybe the day will come one day that an outer government has an inner group of wise women and men keeping in touch with the soul of the nation and have an advisory function or something. The next level of this is becoming aware of the dynamics between nations and holding also them in our consciousness and love, and creating what Assagioli calls spiritual airways among nations and collectives through our visioning, through our imagining them and holding them in our consciousness. And to hold a whole world picture, of course, that is already, it's the work of the new group of world servers as one unified entity. We need to become aware of all these groups of best citizens and start to cooperate more and more. 2025 initiative is doing a wonderful job, very important job here. Also Soulful Connections and others, all this networking going on. The international triangle work, also creating units of light across borders. All this is laying spiritual airways between nations. And of course, this must be also, can and must be expanded beyond humanity into the other kingdoms of nature and with our higher co-workers in the higher kingdom. But this is for another webinar, as I understand, is soon to come. Yeah, okay. That's it.
Thank you, Uta. Let us take a quiet moment together as we reflect on this sharing. Over to you, Alexander.
Thank you, Dot, and thank to all our presenters, Renee, Felix, Ringo, Uta. Thank you for creating this chalice for group reflection on the right relationships on all the levels. this resonant field prepares us to build unified field of humanity. And as we know, the understanding of the law of the cycles is one of the revelations of the new age, and such opportunity of the cycles is the coming festival week in December this year. And as we meditated at the beginning of our session today on the bell within us, the bell of the group heart and the higher bells, it's a call for our unity to work together and to share about this opportunity of working in simultaneous, unanimous alignment in the preparation to the festival week and during the festival week. And so I want to invite Dot, Rebecca, and Wendy to share about an initiative that we invite you all to share as far as possible. So over to you.
Thank you, Alexander. It's a joy to share with you the initiative December Solstice Silent Minute 2019, as we call for a united minute of silence on December 21st, 2019. In 1917, on a battlefield outside Jerusalem, Wellesley Tudor Pole was lying next to a fellow officer who had a vision and said, "I will not make it through the next battle. You will live, Tudor Pole." He said, "Lend us a moment, millions of us, each day, and through your silence give us an opportunity. The power of silence is greater than you know." 23 years later, the London Blitzkrieg occurred and Tudor Pole initiated the Silent Minute. Brits on land, air, and sea, with the support of the BBC and Big Ben, and others around the world, held a minute of silence every evening. A ringing of the bells, and at 9 p.m., 1 minute of silence. The success of the Silent Minute was acknowledged after the war by a high-ranking German officer who said that the Brits had a secret weapon which they could not counter. It was associated with the striking of Big Ben each evening, and it was called the Silent Minute. Today, we face a global crisis, and global citizens are challenged to find ways to address many issues. The Silent Minute Solstice 2019 at 9 p.m. GMT on December 21st offers an opportunity for unitive consciousness through an exact same-time minute of silence on the first day of the festival week of the new group of world servers. New beginnings are frequently preceded by silence, and as we commence a new 7-year cycle, we invite the assistance of the forces of light and all those on the other side of the veil to consciously cooperate with us to address current challenges. Rebecca?
Just a second, I have to unmute Rebecca.
Hello. So one of the most inspiring things about this story of the Silent Minute is the way it brought people together across a whole nation and beyond, and harnessed the potency of subjectively unified goodwill to bring in the light. And the neutrality of a simple moment of silence cut across social and philosophical boundaries and simply invited people to give whatever they could of themselves in response to the need of the moment. With the connectivity we have nowadays, a coordinated silent minute has the ability to go global, focusing intentional goodwill across the whole planet. Our group, Signet, began seeding this global vision with a silent minute on Peace Day last year, joining the International Peace Day Peace Wave, which passes a silent minute around the world across the time zones. And then when members of Sydney Goodwill and the Hill Centre came together with Signet in Queensland in January, the idea soon emerged that became the December Solstice Silent Minute Initiative, and it took flight, aiming to synchronise as many people as possible in a worldwide silent minute at 9 p.m. on 21st of December 2019 London time. The triangular vessel of the three groups was formed to hold the fire and the energy of this impulse to go forth globally. Over to Wendy.
It's written in the Agni Yoga teachings that the art of thinking must be completely and consciously regenerated, but without understanding the three worlds, it's impossible to raise thinking to a new level. The DNA at the heart of the Silent Minute Initiative recognised the need to foster greater cooperation between at least two of these three worlds: the externalized manifest world, the realm of the soul, or the subtle world, and the realm of the spirit, or the fiery world. When the group Triangle undertook this Solstice Silent Minute initiative, we became aware of the significance and energetic presence of Mount Kailash in this new iteration. Firstly, as we explored in the alignment, Mount Kailash is known as the Mountain of the Bell, vibrating to the rhythm of the cosmic bell and distributing this rhythm throughout the planet, indeed through us. Secondly, Mount Kailash is to be the place where the great mountain at the center of the universe, Mount Meru, comes to rest on Earth. Mount Meru is said to be the site where the temporal and the eternal unite, an at-one-ment, if you like, of the divine Mount Meru with the externalized form of Mount Kailash on Earth. Meru in Sanskrit originates from the word spine, and we're told that it is through the interpenetrating worlds of Meru Kailash that the axis of the world passes, where Kailash crowns the top of the planetary spine. The festival week of the new group of world servers heralds the beginning of a 7-year cycle that culminates in 2025. The Solstice Silent Minute offers a unique opportunity for us to attune in silence to the rhythm of the ringing of the Mountain of the Bell, with its call to recalibrate to the axis of our being within the one life, to set humanity's compass, its axis, for the next cycle, aligned with the purpose of Sanat Kumara. The ringing of the bells for the Solstice Silent Minute is a call to our essential identity, our deepest divinity, and our true destiny as citizens of the cosmos. Thank you.
Thank you for this beautiful sharing and for this great initiative that would open our 7 days work during the festival week in December. So with this, we round up our sharing, and we invite you to reflective meditation. We exceeded our time that we originally allocated for our meeting. So therefore, if we understand that if you have other commitments and you have to go, we just invite you to keep this point of high mental focus that we created through this sharing and hold it, and come back tomorrow the same time to share your impressions and to meditate together again. But if you have some more time, we invite you to stay a little bit longer and join us in the meditation that Uta will lead us. Thank you. Over to you, Uta.
Okay. All right. Let us take a deep breath. And let all our parts come into alignment, into right relations. Our physical body, our emotions, our mind, personality and soul into one whole. And extend our relation now into the group. Let our hearts come into resonance. And sense our minds synchronizing. And as this group on this call, let us now enter into resonance with the whole of the new group of world servers, taking a moment to affirm its integrity and unity. We link with our higher co-workers on the other side of the veil. And at the same time now, let us link with our nation. And let the higher energies of unity, of right relations, flow through each of us into our nation. To all citizens of our nation. And we visualize now all nations on earth shifting into relation consciousness. Visualize the caring for the highest good of all gain a critical mass on our planet. Let us take a moment to affirm this. And let this feeling, this felt sense of right relations on our planet radiate out now all over the world as a blessing for one silent minute. Thank you.